Okay. A good Woch, Kumlen, La Black Gemara, Shua Tov, Mitzvah Shabbat Baruchim, Chedesh Tammuz. We are up to the fourth Perek in Gittin. It's all about somebody sends a get via a shliach, which is what we've been learning the last few Parakim. But what happens if he wants to cancel the get? And is he canceling is he canceling the shlichus, or is he canceling the get itself and disqualifying the get? So here we learn in the Mishnah. Hashaleh get lishta. If somebody sends a get to his wife, and the higia b'shliach, and then he somehow or another was able to meet the shliach, or he sent another agent to actually locate shliach. And the Amalai, he told him, no uncertain terms, get shenasati lecha, the get that I have given you, batalu, I want it to be cancelled. If he met the shliach before he actually transferred the get to his wife, he has the right to cancel it. Kidim eitzel ishtay. So that's the so that's talking about he went to the shliach directly and he canceled the agency. He went directly to his wife. Kidim eitzel ishtay. He went to his wife. Or he sent another shliach to go to his wife. And he told her, get the get that I sent to you, which you haven't received yet. Bottle, I want you to know that it's canceled. In both of these instances, as long as she did not receive the get, we're talking about a shliach representing the husband, so she's not divorced yet. He can always change his mind. But once the get arrived at her hand, he can no longer cancel the get. And why not? Because she's obviously divorced. And the Gemara is going to ask, isn't that obvious? Once she's divorced already, what do you mean he changes her mind? Then the Mishnah says, Bari Shoina. Initially, the husband, wherever he was residing, the way Rashi learns, he would form a bezin, and he would tell the bezin, I'm canceling, I sent a get with Ruvain to my wife, or whoever it is. I sent a get with this person, it did not arrive yet to my wife, I'm canceling it. But then, and we'll see later why. The Chacham Rabbi Gamliel decided it doesn't work. His kid Rabbi Gamliel Zaken came along. Rabbi Gamliel Zaken, Rebbe's father was Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, and his Zayd was Rabbi Gamliel, and this was his Zayd's Zayd. Rabbi Gamliel Hazaken, the older Gamliel, he made a special takana that is no good. He said you cannot just form a bezin wherever you are and cancel the get, because when, as we'll see in the Gemara later, one of the reasons is because that the wife has no idea that the get was canceled. She receives a get from the shliach who had no idea the get was canceled. If the husband just forms a bezin in his hometown, wherever he's living, and he cancels the get, what happens is then that the wife receives the get from the shliach who had no idea. Neither of them had an idea that it was canceled, and she goes ahead and marries somebody else, and then all the kinds of problems that arise from that. Especially if you have children, mamzerim. So therefore, I'm going to make a special takon. If you want to cancel the get, you have to go to the shliach himself, the one that you assigned to send the get, or go directly to the wife and inform her before she receives the get that has been canceled. Okay, says the Gemara, Higiyu like Tani. Higiyu means that he actually made an effort to, he made an effort to reach his wife. Doesn't say Higiya, El Higiya, as of a perchance meeting that he had with the shliach or he had with his wife. He said, oh, forget the get that I'm sending to you is canceled. Va'afilu memela. Even if what, it just happened to be that, let's say the shliach was delayed for whatever reason, and he happened to bump into the shliach. Say, you know what? I'm canceling the get. So what's the chiddush? Because the loy amrinim, we don't say l'tzu'uda de kamachaven, and we don't say if he made an effort to find the shliach or to go to his wife, then obviously he wants to cancel the get. If he just happened to bump into the shliach, you could very well interpret his thing. He said, you know what? I want to delay the get to my wife. I want to make her, as difficult as possible to be divorced. And therefore, maybe we shouldn't take it seriously and not cancel the get. So they said, nevertheless, we are going to say, even if they met by chance, even though he gia, they happened to meet, if he decides to cancel the get is canceled. Then the Mishnah says, Oy shisholach acharav shliach, or he sent, either he himself met the shliach, or he actually sent someone, which here now he made an effort. He sent a shliach to find the first shliach to cancel the shlichus. Lumbly. So what are you ending now? In fact, here it's even more reason to understand that's obvious that he could work, because he's disqualifying. He's sending a shliach deliberately to go ahead, specifically to go ahead and cancel the shlichus of the first shliach. So obviously it works. What's the chiddush? No, I would have thought I would have thought that the second shliach is basically verbal. You told him go out there and find the first shliach, and the first shliach is verbal. I would have thought that once you've commissioned the first shliach, you cannot now come along with the second shliach and cancel the first shliach. That he could. That he could. In other words, we would have thought that once you appointed a shliach, he's now a shliach. He's like on his own. And now you're telling another shliach, you're not giving any more powers than the first one. It's too late already. The first shliach had all these verbal powers. Kamashal know that the shliach every minute of the day is representing you, and therefore you can always withdraw or send another shliach to inform him. Then it says in the next part of the Mishnah, Kodem hu Eitzalishta, or he went directly to his wife before she received her get, and he says to her, by the way, I sent out a get to you last week. You didn't receive it yet, but when you get it, you should know that has been canceled. Isn't that obvious? Lumali, what do you need to tell us that for? Isn't that obvious? He can cancel the get as long as she didn't receive it. Why can't he withdraw it? No, Ma'atema, I would have said, Kiloy. I mean, when do we say that? Excuse me. When do we say that he's actually sincere and he's not just trying to play around with her? Kiloy. I mean, when do we not say he's just trying to torment her? Hani mila l'shliach. If he's dealing with the shliach, okay, so it's out of the way, to direct. So obviously he meant it. If he directly goes to the wife and he tells her, that I sent you out to get, now I'm canceling it. Maybe what the intention is merely to make her suffer, and therefore it shouldn't be a valid cancellation. Kamashla, no, technically he has every right, legally has every right to go ahead and cancel again. Okay, then it says, the next part of the Mishnah says, or he sent her a shliach to inform her that the get is canceled. What is it? What are you adding now? Once we've established that a shliach or him is the same thing. And now when he sent to a shliach, and now when he said that he goes to the wife and cancels, it's a valid cancellation. What do you have to add? And if he sends a shliach to the wife and tells her that the get has been canceled, what do you need to add that for? I mean, since totally redundant. I would have thought. I would have still thought that he doesn't mean seriously, he's just playing around with her. I would have thought, that was if he made a special effort to go and find his wife and inform her that the get has been canceled, obviously he means it. But if he sends a shliach, it doesn't cost him any time. He said, look, you're going to that town, tell my wife, maybe just stop trying to torture her. It doesn't matter to the husband if the shliach has to make an effort to go meet his wife. Maybe his intention is merely to torment her. That no. Then the Mishnah says, but get the other, once she received the get in her hand, in other words, she's been divorced, it's too late. You can no longer cancel it. Isn't that obvious? And you can no longer cancel it because she's divorced. Isn't that pshitu? Isn't that obvious? Says no. We need it for the meheder alel mikara lebetulit. We're talking about he already made efforts from the beginning to go ahead and cancel it, and therefore, I would have thought in this case here, doesn't this obvious if we understand and we interpret his thoughts that he intended initially to cancel the beget? So therefore, I would have thought the betuli butler that it's retroactive, and the get should be puzzled. Kamashalan, that the get is not puzzled at all, because the fact is he didn't say to her that the get is puzzled, therefore it's not puzzled.
In practice, how do you cancel a get?
He just says that the get that I wrote is no longer a valid get. Now, right now,
we need ADIM or something for this. He could turn around.
There's a bit of an argument. There's a bit of an argument whether you need ADIM to cancel. You don't need ADIM to cancel. But the point is, he's saying here, the get that I've written for you. Remember that the get has to be written on the shlichus of the husband. Okay. Most opinions say that the sefer is writing on the shlichus of the husband. Others say not necessarily. The husband just has to instruct with that shlichus. But as long as she didn't receive the get, he can say, I don't want to give you the get. And remember, You can't force a husband to give a divorce.
No.
So if he cancels the get, it's not a valid get. Or if he cancels the shlichus, we'll see more later. Are we canceling the agency, or we're canceling the actual get itself? In other words, can he use, let's say he cancels it, can a month later use it again? Or not? Can he reuse it or not? Yeah.
So what happens? So what happens to these guys who've been sitting in jail for 20 years because they won't give their wife a get? Then they say, "Yeah, I'll give the get." They release her. He writes the get and he says, "I'm not giving it anymore."
You say what?
I'm not giving it anymore.
If he did not receive it yet, then you're right. He can do that technically. But these in Israel, where they have the right, the Bezdin have the right to force these recalcitrant husband. We'll learn later that Peches about whether a coerced get is actually a valid get or not. But a Bezdin has the right to coerce a husband to give a get, and you're right.
Does he have a right
We'll
to
see
say
the
no?
Gemara later. We'll see the
I
Gemara
changed
later.
my mind.
We'll see the Gemara in the next, that was a coerced get, and the rabbi told the witnesses to hide, so the husband or the shluchim to hide, so the husband can't find him and cancel the get. Because as Rabbi Gamliel just said, the only way to cancel a get, it's only one way. Either you go to the wife directly, so she'll know, or you go to the shliach. So we'll see Gemara later. They used to tell the shliach hide, so the husband can't find you. You cancel it in a coerced get. Okay. Saying about it further, tell about we learned. If he says bottle who, if he says the get is bottle, or if he says, in other words, future tense, the get might have been valid, but I don't want you to use it. Or if he says if she boy, I don't want this get to be used at all, I can't live with it, I can't deal with it. Well, it's about the future, and he has every right to cancel in the future. But if he says pasalu, he's telling you a statement that this get is already possible. But it isn't. It gets the kosher get. Or he says, ain't a get, this is not a proper get, then he said nothing, because it's one thing to cancel for the future. It hasn't been used yet, right? The shlich still holding on to it, didn't give it to her yet, and he wants to cancel the future. I don't want you to use it, is one thing. But if he's telling you a fact that the get is already possible, already, it's disqualified, but it's not. It's a valid get. Therefore, his words are meaningless. And which means that what? That the shliach can still give the get to the woman. And if we're not talking about a get, we're talking about an ordinary a star, any star. Forget about a get of a woman, any commercial contract, whatever it is. If the person says, "Oh, this thing is not a valid thing about the past, it's not true," and therefore that the star can be activated and be used. So the only time the husband can disqualify it if he's talking about the future tense that hasn't yet been used, and he's talking about the future. I don't want it to be used. Okay, that he could do. So the Gemara says, "Remember." So what are you telling me? That the word bottle is lishna de levatel mashma. That the word bottle sounds like we're talking about the future. That it should be canceled and don't use it. Which he's laying down the rule. Well, fine. Says the Gemara, but Omar Rabba bar Evoy, Omar Rav Sheshes, didn't Rabba bar Evoy, Rabba the son of Evoy, say name Rav Sheshes, or Amnil, others say Omar Rabba bar Avua, or others say Rabba the son of Avua said, Mekabel Matana, that if somebody was receiving a gift, Omar, he said, after he received he received the get, a gift from someone, and after he received it already, he said, Matana zu mevutelis. He says that this matana is cancelled. The din is to bottle, or he says to bottle. He's saying that it should be bottled, that it's. I want it to be disqualified. I want it to be cancelled. Right? It should be bottled. Or he says ef shiba. I cannot use it anymore. I don't want it.
You're talking about the recipient of the gift.
The recipient, no, not a gift. We're now talking about a shtar matana gift, and he already received the gift in his hand. And after he received the gift in his hand, he's saying that it was bottled before I even got it. I never really wanted it. And we have a general rule: does baldin timei eid. If I admit that I owe you $100, you can have 100 witnesses saying that I don't owe it to you. I do owe it to you, because when I admit, and it's hurting me, it's harming me, then I am believed. So this person is coming along and saying that all along when I received this gift, I never really received it properly. It's not a valid gift, for whatever reason it is. It's no good.
But what's the similarity between receiving a gift and giving a get?
Just 1 second. We're talking right now, till now we were talking about a get, and we said that if a person, the husband who's giving the get, talks about future tense, that this get should be disqualified, it's a valid disqualification. If he uses a language of past tense that this get was never good, it's meaningless because the get is good. Now we're asking you questions. The word that you used was the bottle. We said that bottle sounds like future tense. In the case of a gift, you use the exact same word, and there we say about past tense. In other words, if you received a gift, you're kind it, it's yours. And then you say, I don't want it from now on. It's a meaningless phrase. It's too late. It's yours already. Once I have it in my possession, the only way that I can cancel it is if I'm saying that all along, even before I received it, I never wanted it. I was never kind it properly. So we're using the same word, the bottle, that we use by a get, and when it comes to a get, we say it's future tense, and therefore it's a valid form of disqualification. And by recipient of a matana, we say that same word is a valid form of cancellation because it's about past tense. You're saying it was never good in the first place. So we're asking a question: which one is it? Is it future tense or is it past tense? The Gemara says, "Batelehi Eina matana." If he says "Batelehi," it should be bottle, or he says it should no longer be a gift, or he says. He's all of these words. But if you tell me it's the word of kayamin. Alma, what is it from here? Bottle. So if he says the word to bottle, or he says ef shiba, it's meaningless because he already has it. So no, if he did not receive this gift, it's not a worthwhile gift. It goes back to the donor, to whoever gave him the gift. But so in this case over here, when he says betela, which means before I even received it, I didn't want it, he's believed. So we're asking a question. Alma, what do we see? That bottle mikaramash. He used the word bottle by matana. It's as if he said that it was never his in the first place. So we're asking a question. By get, you interpreted the word bottle means future tense. Even though it's a valid get, I don't want it to be used. I want to disqualify it. So it's about the future. When it comes to matana, and we say that it's not a valid, that I already was kind of the matana. If you want in any way cancel the matana, there's the only way they can cancel matana is if he says things about the past. For example, he says which is about the past.
But isn't the diuk here in the brisa brought by Rabbi Bar Avua is that he's a makabel already? He's makabel matana.
That's exactly the point.
And then he says,
it's exactly the point. By a matana, once you have it already, it's yours. So how can you say it's not mine? The only way it's not they say not mine is when you gave it to me, I never wanted it in the first place. So the only way to unravel the gift is to say that yesterday, when you gave it to me, I already didn't want it then. It was in other words, it's past tense. So the word betela, when we say over here, devar of kayam, it's not a matana, must be he's talking about when he received it yesterday. By a get, when he says that beteli, it's bottled, the only way you can cancel a get is if you talk about the future. You didn't receive it yet. It was a good get, but I don't want you to have it. If he says the get was never good in the first place, it's meaningless because the get is a valid get written by a sefer properly. What do you mean it was never good? You can't do that. So that's the most question. Why comes the get, we interpret betela about the future. When it comes to matana, we interpret the word betela means about the past. Which one is it? Says the Gemara. Bottle, the word bottle, it can be interpreted either way. And therefore, we look at the context of each one. So therefore, and he's trying to cancel the get. That's what he's trying to do. So mashma the bottle or mashma the levatel. The word betela can mean past tense, that's already disqualified. And it could mean that it should be in the future disqualified. So gabe get, when it comes to divorce, lishna bahani bekama, he's using an expression which only is affected by divorce, which is what future tense. Gabe matana, when it comes to matana, which already was kind of, the only way to cancel it is if he says never, it was never mine in the first place. Is lishna the bahani bekama, a language that is affected by a matana, which can only be past tense. So that finishes that. Amar Abaye says Abaye. Naktinon, the rule is that shliach matana, if you have a shliach for a matana, hareihu kishliach haget.
Doesn't feel well, man.
You have a shliach. If you have a shliach if you appoint a shliach to deliver a matana to somebody, it has the same status as you appoint a shliach to give a get. And what do you mean? L'chayda is a big difference. When it comes to a get, we learned before. that it's not a valid get until the woman receives it because it's harmful, it's a negative thing, and therefore it's not a valid get until she receives it. When it comes to matana, we said before that it's a that it's a positive thing, and therefore zachin la adam shalei b'fanav. And even before she received it, as soon as the person picked it up, she was already zeicha. So what do you mean that shliach haget is the same as a shliach matana? So the Gemara says, what do you mean? Amar Abaye, Naktina, the rule is that shliach matana, you sent a point of shliach to deliver a matana, is just like a shliach haget. Nafkamina, what exactly do you mean? And in other words, when you say it's the same thing, means that the only way to cancel it is if you can cancel it before the person receives it. So you can cancel it again before she receives it, but you can also cancel a matana before the recipient receives it. But l'chayla matana, the moment the shliach picked it up, the recipient already was kinda. Says the Gemara, we're talking about a case where he uses the word l'haylach. And we already learned before that haylach, when I say deliver, is not the same thing as I say acquire. Lav kischidam. If I would have said be zoich on behalf of the beneficiary, that means acquire it. And the moment you picked it up, it belongs to the beneficiary. I can no longer change my mind. But because I use the word l'haylach, which means deliver, it's not considered the beneficiary until you actually deliver it. So he can always change his mind as long as you didn't deliver it yet. Said the Gemara, Ravina, Ashke, he once encountered Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. He once encountered Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. We already learned yesterday that there's Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, Rav Nachman by Yaakov. And Rashi learned yesterday Rav Nachman by Yitzchak in Shas. Whenever it says Rav Nachman Yitzchak, that's the name. Whenever we see Rav Nachman's name without tracing his genealogy, that is Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. And Taisha disagrees. He says, no, Rav Nachman Yitzchak was a separate person altogether. It's Rav Nachman bar Yaakov, who is the famous Rav Nachman that we know about. And this Rav Nachman Yitzchak was just a very wealthy person. Anyway, says the Gemara, Ravina, Ashke, he once found Rav Nachman Yitzchak, the Toli, the Koi, Ibra, the Dashi, sitting there leaning against the doorpost in his house. And what do you do when you lean against the doorpost? It's to learn. The Kamabayile, and the following question he had. What about if he didn't use the word bottle who? That it should be bottle. He just said the word bottle. How do we interpret that? Do we say bottle mouth? Do we say that bottle on its own is actually retrospective and therefore it's meaningless because the get is a valid get and you cannot say it was not a good get? Or do we say even though it's minus the word who, but say bottle is future tense? Take who, we remain with a question. Rav Sheshes said, but I'm the other say the masnik lit the braisa. If they're using the following terms, how do we understand these terms? He says that get zeh, the following get lo yoyil shouldn't help. He says that this get should not help, or he says that this get lo yati, that this get should not in any way enable this woman to remarry, or he says v'lo yaziv, or he says that this get should not enable her to leave, or he said lo yishlav, this get will not let her not send her away, or lo yikad should not divorce her, or he says yehei kechedes should be like shard, clay shard, or he said yehei chedes, this is clay shard, or he says yehei kichedes, or it should be like clay shard. In all of these cases, the word of kayami. In all of these cases, it's effective. The words are effective. Okay. What happens if he said, because these are all future tense, anything in future tense, the words are effective. Basically, he's saying is that this get should not be used. It's like clay shard. It's like, I don't want to be used for divorce. Okay, that's all effective. What happens if he says, Einoi moyil? If he says it does not help, and which is like past tense. He says, he's not saying, I want to disqualify the get. He's telling you a fact that this get is not a kosher get. It won't work. But it's not true. It's a lie. Or he says, Eina matir, this get is ineffective because it won't do the job of being matir. Or Eina mazid, it won't enable her to leave. Or Eina mishalech, it won't send her away. Or Eina megadish, she doesn't divorce her. Cheresu, it's a clay shard. He's not saying it should be. He's saying it is. Or kicheresu, it's like a clay shard. In all these cases, loy amaklum. Why? Because it's all about the past. And it's not true. Nothing you said here is true. See, boilu, what happens if he says, when you use the words harehu cheres in Hebrew, you said this is cheres. Are you talking about the future? Then it's effective, or you're saying you're telling us a fact. This is how it is, and therefore it's ineffective. Mao, what's it in then? So Rav Avina said to Rav Acha, the son of Rav, Amnila, and others say Rav Acha, B'rei de Rav, Rav Ashi. Others say Rav, the son of Acha, said to Rav Ashi, Ma'ishna, why should there be any different than the case where a person says, Hareihu Hegdish? He said that this should be Hegdish, right? You say many times, this should be Hegdish. And, or Hareihu Hef, or he Hefke, and you always interpret as future tense, it becomes Hegdish, it becomes Hefke, which means it's about the future. You're not saying it is already Hefke, it's not true. We're saying it means that you want it to become Hefke, you want to be Hegdish. So why should this be any different? If you say Harei Chedes, you're saying it should be like Chedes, or it should be Chedes, and therefore I cannot use this divorce. Says you want further. Okay, let's say the husband canceled the get. But what exactly did he cancel? Let's say the husband changed his mind a month later. Again, he decides to divorce his wife. Can he go ahead and use it again or not? Did he just cancel the agency, but the get is still valid when he uses all of these different expressions? I don't want this get to be used. Or is he actually canceling the get? Because if he canceling the get, then you have to rewrite the get. But if he's just canceling the agency, then the get itself is valid, and use it again whenever you want to appoint a new shliach. That's the question. So we have an argument. So the Gemara, Rav Nachman says, Rav Nachman says, use it again. In other words, all you did was when you canceled the get is you canceled the shliach, but you didn't cancel the get itself. And Rav Sheisha says, Sheisha says, no, you cannot use it again because you're not only canceling the shliach,
this morning. Why didn't you pass on it this morning? Can I wait till night time?
Says the Gemara. The hilchus of the halacha is kavase the Rav Nachman, the halacha like Nachman, which means that all you canceled was the shlichus, and you could redo the get in the future. Says the Gemara, Eini, it's not so. If somebody can mute themselves. Eini, it's not so. But Kaimlan, don't you have a
I think it's
rule?
Max, can you mute yourself? Max, can you mute your computer?
Says the Gemara, Eini, it's not so. Don't we have a rule that Hilchus Kavasa Rabbi Yochanan? Don't we have a rule that the halach is like Rabbi Yochanan, who says that the Omar, the story there is a man says to a woman, I'm giving you money today. I don't want you to be engaged to me today. I want you to be engaged to me in 30 days from now. And then within the 30 days, so no, she's not engaged yet for the 30 days. Within the 30 days, he turns to his wife and he says, let's cancel the Kedushin. And he can, because the Kedushin is not effective until the 30 days are up. And he canceled day number 20. So the Chayda, Rabbi Yochanan says, clearly, Chayzeres, you can use the money again. So why can't we do the same thing over here? That, Chayzeres, he can change his mind and cancel the Kedushin. So why can't you say by the get? How can you say by the get? We're saying the get itself is valid. All he canceled was a shlichus. Over there, by the case of Kedushin, Rabbi Yochanan said you cancel the actual Kedushin. This money is no longer Kedushin. He has to give it to her again as Kedushin. But this money itself is no longer Kedushin, which if you interpret that or you apply it to a get, you would say it means he canceled the get itself. What's the difference? So how can you pass on Rav Nachman the get is valid? It's only a question of the agency being disqualified. Says the Gemara, you want to compare Kedushin, the case of Kedushin with money, to the case of the get. Hachi Hashem, what do you compare? Hasam over there, Dibur with Diburu. That what over there, the Kedushin is all about words. He says to her that you're Mekudesh to me, and she agreed. And then he uses other words to cancel that, to retract what he said. So Dibur is Mevatel Dibur. And he never canceled the money, so he can actually use that money again for Kedushin. Is over here. So ahasam dibur with dibur, it's words and words. Also dibur about dibur. Words can cancel words. The hach over here, he the batli l'shlichus the gita. Over here, the get is more than just words. The get, the actual document, is in writing form. There's a ma'isa there. So the only thing that he's canceling here are the words itself, nothing more than that. So therefore, the get itself is still intact, and you can use the same get again. Has nothing to do with the case of Kedushin. Guf Mika Bati, never cancel the get itself. Then we learned in the Mishnah, Rabbi Gamliel, it used to be in the old days, the husband living overseas, the wife is somewhere far away, And he would just walk into a bezin. We'll soon see how many people had to be there. He walks into the bezin and he says to them, look, I sent the get to my wife last week. I know it takes a month to get this, so she doesn't have it yet. I changed my mind. I have a change of heart. I want to cancel the get. And that's how it was. Till Rabbi Gamliel came along and made a special institution. The only way to cancel a get is if you go directly to the shliach that you sent and you tell him to cancel it, or you go directly to the wife. So says the Gemara, in front of how many people initially did they cancel before the Gamliel came along? And Rab Nachman says bifnei beis, in front of 2 people, and we'll call that a bezin as well. And Rav Sheshes Omar bifnei gimel, in front of 3 people. Now, why in the world would we have an argument in the Gemara about a situation where the Gemara said we no longer follow that situation? Now you can no longer cancel in front of a bezin. But we're going to see in the Gemara later, Machlekes according to Rebbe, the Yevid, if you still can't even post Rabbi Gamliel, but the Yevid, if you cancel the get, it's a valid cancellation. So we need to know, but the Yevid, is it in front of 2 people or is it in front of 3 people? So we have Machlekes. Rav Sheshes says 3 people, and Nachman says 2. Rav Sheshes on b'fnei gimel bezin, it's clear in the Mishnah, you had to establish a bezin. Rav Nachman on b'fnei beis 2. Sometimes we call a bezin of 2 people also a bezin.
But it's 2 people is Adim, not a based in.
So you say, no, but the Mishnah clearly says bezin. So Nachman says that sometimes, as we'll see in a minute, we call a bezin also 2 people. In fact, we can have a Moshe Hedron, and Taisus can wonder why the Gemara doesn't bring it. Shmuel holds that a bezin of 2 people is also kosher. He calls it a bezin chutzpah, a bezin with chutzpah, but it's still a valid bezin. So you can have 2 people on certain occasions and call it a bezin as well. How do I know that 2 people can be referred to as a bezin? Exactly what you just asked. How do I know that 2 people called a bezin? Could it nan? We learned the concept of a prusbul. So a prusbul is that, if I lend you money and become shmita, it cancels the loan. So what do I do to circumvent that? I form a bezin and I pass on all my loans to the bezin. And I say that you guys carry my loans. The Torah says, lo yigoy, that I personally shouldn't go and demand the payment for my loan. But now it's in the hands of a bezin, it's no longer personal anymore. So it says in the Mishnah, the person says, it actually says later on in Gittin, by a prusbul, I'm giving over all my documents and all my debtors to the bezin. So it's the bezin demanding it. So it's no problem. You go, it's like this. I am giving to you plenty, Hinam is a people, and how many people? And he calls them hadayonim, the judges. So there are 2 people there, and he calls them dayonim. Shema complaining in this place. So clearly, what is even here? That 2 people is also called a bezin. Clearly, he's called a bezin. Nu, Rab Sheshes, what's he going to respond to that? He says the minimum size of a bezin is 3. Rab Sheshes, Otu Tana Kiruchla Lechoshev Eleza. You think Tana is like a merchant who sells spices that he's going to tell you every single detail? The Mishnah just said bezin. It gives you an example, but it doesn't mean that's limited to 2. It's 3 actually. The Mishnah didn't bother exhausting all the details. Plainy. That wasn't the purpose of the Mishnah. But really,
I always thought that you had to have 3 in a bezdin because you could never even number. You had to have
only when it comes to a dispute. When there's no dispute, you don't need that. Said the Gemara, Rab Nachman said, how do I know? How do I know 2 people are valid bezin? That nan we learned hadayonim chaysmin lemata. Again, by prusbul it says that the judges they sign below. All the witnesses. Now, the judges, all the witnesses. My lav, dayanim, dumidadim. Now, the judges are just like witnesses. My edim shnaim, just like witnesses, 2 is enough, sufficient. Av dayanim nami shnaim. So, comes the judges, also 2 is sufficient because dayanim are edim. But Sheshes says, Midei Ilya, does it say anywhere clearly what you just said, that Dayanim can mean 2? Ha Kedisa, each one is whatever we normally know. When it says Edim, we know you need 2. When it says Dayanim, we know you need 3. Why are you equating the 2? So the question would ask, okay, fine. So we have no proof, and they continue their argument. Says that since 1 is enough, so what do you have to mention both? Right? Well, if you already have Edim good enough, you have to tell me that a bezin is also good enough. So the Gemara HaKamash is coming to teach you a totally different halacha. That is as follows. It doesn't matter whether you wrote it in the language like we were a bezin and we sat down and this person came before us and said, I'm handing you over all my debts and all my loans. And he used the word plaini or plaini. And B'chosmi Eidim, we start off saying B'moisa Beidin in front of a bezin, but only two people sign, two witnesses. And Now we don't care if Kosev Lashon Eidim. It was written in the language of Eidim. For example, it says that that Eidim is standing in front of us, and this person is so on and so forth. And B'chosmi Eidim, you have three judges signing. That's what he's trying to say here. So we have an argument of Sheish and Nachman if you need two